Hello and welcome back to another episode of Diablo to D&D. My name is David, and today we're going to be going over the changelog for October 27th. Now, I am going to jump right into this because this is, as you can see on the screen, literally every available space. This is not zoomed out or zoomed in. So I'm going to rush through all of this. I am actually very, very, very happy about this because these are a bunch of minor changes that needed to be made that are indicative of kind of the last vestiges of the passes over for the my channel's second year anniversary. All right, for the Paladin, Holy Bolt's saving throw is moved from the base ability to the damaging choice. This way you no longer have to make a dexterity saving throw in order to be healed. It just happens. Fist of the Heavens' secondary effect is now written out instead of referring to the Holy Bolt ability and uses 2d8s. This way it clears up some confusion about does this interact with Holy Bolt or not. Holy Bolt and Fist of the Heavens healing can now affect creatures once per short or long rest, not just once per long rest. I think this was inspired by the healer feat, I think. Just allows you to use your abilities a little bit more often. Cleansing, concentration, and convictions improvements no longer offer a choice, and instead tie into the choice from the main part of the aura. This was a bit weird. You could actually make different choices depending. Like you could have a creature affected by one part of the aura but not the other. So instead I just kind of mushed them together. It also sounds better. Meditation now only works when the expended spell slot was used to cast a spell. That way you're not interfering or interacting with a couple of other abilities that allow you to expend a spell slot in order to get some other ability. And then lastly for the Paladin, Fist of the Heavens' secondary ability is now a May ability. All right, there's one for the Amazon. This is a bit of out of place for the other Amazon abilities. The Valkyrie has been moved from the 18th level to the 20th level. I brought this up in the previous video when I made the Goddess's Chosen ability. So that's why this is here. Basically anything beyond the Assassin in the next section is going to be me going back over and doing a final pass on all of the classes. For the Assassin, Blade Shield's damage is now 2d4 instead of 3d6. Blade Shield was really powerful, and so yeah, I'm cutting it down by a significant margin. Blade Shield can now be used only once per long rest instead of twice. See the above. Venom's damage is now 1d4 instead of 3d4. Even if it is it's a 20th level ability, 3d4 is a significant amount of damage. So I might bump Venom up to 1d6 or something like that. But for now, it got nerfed by literally 66%. All right, for the Amazon, Strafe no longer deals an extra 1d8 damage. This is a significant change because this is a 14th level ability and you could target any number of creatures, and so it got a lot of damage. So that got pulled out. Guided Arrow no longer grants disadvantage on the saving throw if you know the creature's exact location. I can't remember exactly why I changed it, but I think it's perfectly fine. Probably because it was a 10th level ability. But anyway, Impale's chance to break the weapon is now determined by the attack's damage roll, not damage. So this change is based on the initial amount of damage that your attack would have dealt, unaffected by things like vulnerability or damage reduction or resistance. So it is quite literally just I added roll to the phrasing rather than just damage. So it's the initial amount, not the modified amount once the creature's abilities are taken into account. Valkyrie is no longer acts by itself if you fall to 0 hit points. Falling to 0 hit points is kind of encapsulated in the falling unconscious and incapacitated part of that ability. So, and also if you if you somehow fall to 0 hit points and are not incapacitated or fall unconscious, then you still can issue orders instead of it triggering. So, a small corner case, and I mean like microscopic, but meh. Strafe no longer allows you to attack up to 10 creatures within the normal range of your weapon, and instead allows you to choose a point you can see within range of your weapon and make attacks against any number of creatures within 10 feet of that point. This is quite literally taken from the Hunter's volley ability, or the Hunter Ranger's volley ability. Strafe was incredibly powerful because you just run into the pack of enemies and you can hit up to 10 creatures. I decided to cut it back down to a more manageable size. It is weaker than volley because the Hunter Ranger gets it at level 10, and this is a level 14 ability, but I also think it's okay considering you have a couple of other abilities that allow you to tie into it. For example, I think it's Penetrate. That allows you to bump your bonus to hit by your Wisdom modifier, so it's a little more accurate. So, I don't feel too bad about it. Enchanted Shot no longer replaces an attack from the attack action and is instead its own action that requires a bow or crossbow. This way, if you get somehow multiple attacks on your character, you can still only do it once per turn instead of multiple times. As a side note to that does mean that haste no longer works with it, because you can no longer do take the attack action, replace the attack with Enchanted Shot, then take the attack action for haste, and then replace the attack with an Enchanted Shot. So there it is. Magic Arrow and Enchanted Shot now only do ranged weapon attacks, not ranged attacks. If somehow you're doing ranged spell attacks, it doesn't work with that. Poison Javelin can now be used 3 times per long rest instead of using your Wisdom modifier to calculate the number of uses per long rest. This is kind of in response to the Lightning Javelin's Lightning Bolt ability, which could be used only twice per long rest. So this way it is it's very, very weak. Poison Javelin is much weaker, dealing only 1d6, but also inflicting poison and some other things. So I allowed you to have an additional use, just, I don't know, as a treat. Fend no longer deals additional damage equal to half your proficiency bonus, rounded down, continuing to nerf the Spear is on. And then we are moving on to the Barbarian. Grim Ward can no longer affect creatures hostile towards creatures other than you, unless they are also hostile toward you. This is kind of clearing up the awkwardness of a creature you choose. Just kind of as a flavor thing, I guess, instead of like, oh, if you're hostile to the Paladin, but not me, then somehow the Paladin gets wrapped into this representation of a danger sign. So, Battle Command now affects creatures chosen with Shout, not granted temporary hit points with battle orders. So the reason why I did this is because if the creature doesn't want to accept the bonus hit points from battle orders, then they would not gain the benefit of Battle Command. So Battle Command now ties directly into Shout, because everybody's going to accept the bonuses from Shout to their saving throws and AC, because those things can stack, whereas temporary hit points do not. Speaking of which, Shout now clarifies that you can choose yourself. Technically, you always could, but this is a clarification instead of a mechanical change, but because it was ambiguous enough that it could have been a mechanical change, I'm including it here. Child of the Ancients additional damage is now 1d6 instead of 1d8. Just a slight nerf because it felt right, I guess. Also, it allows the other two options to be just a little bit more attractive. Warcry now deals 3d8 damage instead of 4d8. This is directly in response to the feeling that it dealt a little bit too much damage, but also Thunderclap, a cantrip, deals at this level 3d6, which is pretty close. So it kind of felt right, but because it is a 14th level ability, it's 3d8 instead of 3d6, and it has a range of 10 feet, not just 5 feet. That is kind of an indication that 4d8 could technically be more appropriate because, but also, I don't know, 3d8 just kind of feels right. I had considered allowing you to use your Constitution instead of just your Charisma for the saving throw, but I haven't decided on that yet, so I'm going to pass that down the line. For now, anyway. All right, double throw now removes a disadvantage for long range with thrown weapons. This is to bump double throw up to be a little bit more powerful so that it reduces the strain on your feats so that you don't have to pick up sharpshooter if you don't want to, but also it just kind of makes sense because this is what the class does, is throw at range. And also it ties into piercing attack. Piercing attack no longer grants advantage for creatures outside the normal range of your weapon, but no longer grants half damage on a success. So these two changes together kind of show that you're able to throw accurately at distance and even through multiple people or creatures. So, I think it fits. It also kind of reduces the additional words on the ability. Oh, but they get advantage on the saving throw if they're beyond the normal range. You don't have to worry about calculating all of that. You can just say, okay, in this line for this long, everybody makes a saving throw. But because it is a distinct missile, that's why it no longer grants half damage on success. Is because it is if you succeed on the saving throw, it is completely removed, or it's completely avoided. So meh. Now I had considered allowing you to add your dexterity or strength modifier to the damage, and I'm still considering it to better represent an quote-unquote attack, but again, I'll just kick that one down the road. Stun is no longer a part of the attack action and instead is its own action. Stun was in an awkward position because I wanted people to use it as a part of the attack action, but in conjunction with their other abilities. But also stun's very powerful, so you lose out on the additional attacks with the attack action. But I wanted it also to work with 2-weapon fighting because you needed the attack action for that. And I just gave up. So stun is, I think, powerful enough to warrant no longer being tied to the attack action and instead being its own action, which does not allow you to take the 2-weapon fighting bonus action. This does mean that Frenzy gets a little weird. And in fact, I would have made more changes, but I ran out of space on the screen. But there were more changes that I would like to make to the Barbarian, or to the Weapon Master Barbarian. Stun and Concentrate were giving me absolute nightmares because of their interaction with Berserk Frenzy and Whirlwind, because if I worded it this way, then it didn't interact with 2-weapon fighting, which made the Frenzy Barbarian weird, but if I did a slightly different way, then it would mean that Whirlwind didn't get included, or just weirdness all around. So I am kicking this one down the line because I cannot for the life of me, figure out how I'm supposed to do these abilities. Now, I would really, really appreciate some feedback on how to word these things, because I feel like there's a way to do it. Like, I mean, the easiest way to do this is to make Frenzy just say, as a bonus action, you can make 2-weapon attacks with your offhand weapon. But then you don't get benefits for like some of the other feats that or abilities that work with 2-weapon fighting, and like the 2-weapon fighting style, and it just so I'm sure there's a way to word everything so that it works very nicely. Maybe a reword to, I don't know, Whirlwind or something. Berserk is its own kettle of fish, so I've got to work on that one as well. But the whole thing's a mess, and that's something I've got to figure out. Anyway, last one. Bash can now be used only once each turn. This is a way to nerf it because it's a shove. It's just a shove. So you're not hitting 4 times, attack action, attack, frenzy, bonus action, attack twice, and knock them back 40 feet as you move them around the battlefield. It is only one time. Now, that does mean on my first attack, I attack them, they potentially get knocked down, and then I have advantage on all the weapon attacks against them. I don't know. Bash itself is another issue. The whole subclass is just nuts. But this is what I enjoy doing anyway, so. All right, I am going to end it there. This was so much fun. Oh my gosh, this was so much fun going through and making each individual tweak, just changing the wording to make them fit a little bit better or make them a little bit more balanced, nerfing here, bumping there. So this is what I love. This is what I want to do for a living. Anyway, I'm going to close out. You can find me at XenosFan2, that is XENOZFAN2 on Blue Sky and Reddit. And you can contact the channel directly at Diablo TODND on Blue Sky and YouTube. Thank you much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Have a good whatever.